On this episode of Team Building Saves the World.
I'm talking to my team all the time, even during, this interview, there's Slack messages coming through, I'm sure. And and it's not meant to catch people,
Right.
but it is meant to catch people a little bit in the sense of you want to test it and make sure that you can trust what they're saying. Don't just sandwich negative feedback with two positives. I've heard that one. And I think people have figured that one out.
Hello, team. It's me, your old friend, Rich Rinnensland, host of Team Building Saves the World, the show where I speak to thought leaders from around the world, discussing variable strategies and tools to help you and your team build a better work environment. And today, I want to make sure you're hearing me right as we discuss effective internal communications with the founder and CEO of the Bid Lab, Maurice Harary. But first, I need to share some love with my supporters at Team Bonding. If your team is ready to experience teamwork through the power of play, then visit teambonding.com to learn more. Now, my friends, he's eager to jump in, so please join me in welcoming my guest, Maurice Harary. Maurice!
Hi, everyone.
There he is. Thank you. Thank you so much, Maurice. Thanks for coming on. I'm so glad you could be here.
My pleasure.
I've been doing some studying up about you before we got on, so I want to make sure that my team get in the same headspace. Go ahead and start us off. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how the Bid Lab got started.
I'm Maurice Harary. I'm one of the co-founders of the Bid Lab. I started the Bid Lab with my wife and co-founder Jordan, who used to be running auto car dealerships. I was heading up RFPs and bids at a big tech company. And one day she needed to open up a new car dealership, which requires a bid. And she needed help. And, she paid someone else $10,000 to develop her RFP when I was doing this for a living.
But she could have kept that in the family.
She could have kept it in the family, yes.
Right.
And then, overnight she ended up having to, because the night before the bid was due, it was terrible. I redid it. I couldn't allow my wife to submit something like that. I redid the whole thing. And it ended up being this situation where the entity that was bidding called her and said they had never seen a bid like this. And it was amazing, and it was such a good job. And so my wife and I looked at each other. We were like, $10,000 for a document that was terrible? That would be the competition? Let's jump in and help. And that's where the Bid Lab was born. And now we're helping small businesses like auto dealerships, but a ton of different, industries doing their bids around the country.
The big thing that I was surprised to learn about the Bid Lab is that you are 100% remote. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. We were actually 100% remote even before COVID.
Okay.
My wife and I started this. We bootstrapped the whole thing. So keeping things remote was a really great way to get started with the business. And we started in 2017. Now, we were well positioned by the time COVID broke out to really be able to help companies that needed immediate assistance with their RFPs and their bids in a remote setting. And so we still continue it to this day. Our company is completely remote. Even after we've had tremendous growth, our team is still 100% remote.
Okay. But that's the big thing. That's the main reason we have you on here talking about effective communication internally is, what are the challenges you face, either remotely or face-to-face, with your teams when it comes to effective internal communication?
I think that the people really think about it as there can be this huge challenge, right? Or this huge, problem with remote. But if you find the right people, I think that there won't be that challenge. The biggest thing is that the person that is the right person has to be someone that confirms and communicates that they actually received an instruction or received guidance or received a project.
Right.
Not just assuming that people will just assume that you did the right thing. If there was an in-person office building, your boss can just come up to you and see how you're doing and see, give you the instructions and see a nod, right? Like, oh yeah, I hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. But in remote, if someone doesn't respond and confirm that they actually know what they're doing, then they probably wouldn't last very long at our company.
Okay.
You need to communicate and confirm when you actually, get an assignment, get a project, get an instruction. I think it's really important.
But I mean, how is it you can make certain? What's your actual do's and don'ts when it comes to making sure that misinterpretation is handled correctly, that the tone of a discussion is the way you want it to be?
So the first thing I would do is say on the do side is, confirm your receipt of the instructions by maybe even summarizing the instructions to your boss or your manager that can say, hey, this is how I understand the instructions. Mm-hmm. Is this what you meant? And let them confirm, or let them say, and if they don't understand, right, move away from, say, messaging, move away from slacking this conversation. Okay. I find when there's too much back and forth of clarifying,
right,
eventually one side will feel awkward and just be like, I think, it's better to just get on a call, hash it out. And another do there is after you get on the call, don't just get on a call, get on a video call, right? Okay. Seeing the right person and seeing their reactions. There's a lot of nonverbal communication that goes on. We do lose some of it with remote,
sure.
But if you have your video on, you at least can eliminate or minimize how much of that you're actually losing. I would say don't send, you asked for do's and don'ts. Don't, from the manager's perspective, don't assume that an important message was seen, right? If someone didn't answer you, double check with that person before you let too much time go on. Don't argue over writing. Talk it out, hash it out. And also try not to send, a stream of consciousness set of messages, one after the other of 8 messages when you could probably consolidate it into one big message. I find that when 8 messages come through, people get, they just can't consume the information that the way that the person is trying to convey it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's the more that is said, the easier it is for somebody to misconstrue.
Yes, exactly. And just be precise about the wording you're choosing. And if they have questions, then answer them.
And how many different types of tech do you use when it comes to communicating with your teams? I mean, you already mentioned Slack. I assume you...
Yes, I use Slack. It's the best. I use the Google suite of tools. So, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Drive, Google Meets. I can probably be an advertisement for Google at this point. But in addition to that, we also use project management tools. We've actually just made a big transition to Monday.com that we found is helpful for communicating tasks and deliverables by a certain date as well. And good old-fashioned email.
So you had talked about having the right type of people.
Uh-huh.
What exactly is the right type? I mean, what makes them right?
I think that someone that is a good communicator is someone that will be a good communicator even during the interview process. But I think not just necessarily taking a person's word for that they're a good communicator, right? If you ask someone, hey, are you a good communicator? I don't think people would necessarily think that they aren't.
Sure.
But finding the non-verbal ways of how people communicate, right? So how is their email cadence during the interviewing process? Are they taking a long time to respond? Are they responding quickly? Are they responding professionally? Are they responding just with like a one-line word, email? You're like, if they're doing this before the interview, imagine what they would be doing once they're already an employee.
Right.
But everyone comes with their own communication style, and I think that's okay, right? As long as you show, respect in your communication, some positivity. We're all about positivity here at the Bid Lab, right? Bringing positivity to your communication and always being trustworthy and moral and the things you're communicating. Okay. Those are the 3 pillars, I would say. But then, a little enhancement here, a little enhancement there. That's normal, I think, once employees become, employees.
Well, wanting to dig in a little bit there, because positivity. If you're communicating mostly via text or emails, how do you maintain positivity? I cannot tell you how many times I have tried to put forth even the most rudimentary of jokes in a text or an email, and it just falls flat. So how do you maintain that, not only the positivity, but the corporate culture of it?
Yeah, I think I wish there could just be one answer, right? I wish there could just be like, here, you take this course and you bring in positivity, right?
Sure.
But I think it's a combination of a bunch of little things, right? I think the first thing, it starts with yourself, right? Be nice and be positive yourself, even when you're stressed, even when your team is growing so quickly, even when the clients are putting pressure on you, be nice, right? There's no reason why, especially as, in the management position, if you're not nice, that will roll everywhere, underneath you. This is a really hard one also, is remove your high performers that are negative. And, a lot of times people look at negative people and high performers as possibly two very different people. But sometimes someone could be very efficient and great at what they do, but nasty about how they do it.
Yeah.
And if you say to the rest of the team that that's okay, it's only about the work, it's only about the KPI, then they're only going to be focused about the work. They're only going to be focused about the KPI. So it's really, really important to either, and don't just, get rid of that high performer that's negative. Obviously try to work on an improvement plan for them, of being more positive, signing them up for maybe a communications course or something to be more positive.
Okay.
But, definitely bringing it back to, it shouldn't be one versus the other. It should be both. And call out the positive communicators. Always. If someone's communicating the right way, they're being positive, they're being professional, call them out. Say, I love how you said that. That's a great way to say that. We should turn that into a template, right? And that's going to bring me to my next thing, is try and templatize as much as you can, right? Okay. If you can make templates that are already building in positivity and professionalism, let people configure them and put their own style on those templates as much as they want.
Right.
But give them a framework. What is the expectation? I think a lot of times people, like you were saying, sometimes I'm saying a joke and I think it's a joke, and and that's okay. Jokes humor differs from geography and location, right? You can't expect everyone to understand everything, but if you give them a template and a framework to operate within, it's nice because it does give them also, the guardrails of where I can really go. How far can I go with this? And then the last thing is really just make it a part of your core values. Core values for a company, we actually at the Bid Lab have positivity as our core value, right? It's a core value here. Okay. And I know it sounds like something you just say, but bringing if it's a core value, you put it into all your communications and every single part of your process, however you're interacting both internally and externally. And if you're missing that, people will call you out on it. Right? Because you put it front and center in all of your materials, they will call you out on it. And together, I think all those points really bring in a positive work environment, at least here at the Bid Lab, we have.
Why would you think that'd be so important, though? Because there are still those companies, not just positivity, but any of it. Because there are still companies out there that think, I want to just give you the job to do, not hear from you until the job is done, and know that I'm making money because you did your job right. They're still there. So what's the importance driving this way of motivating?
I think that the motivation, at least for here at the Bid Lab, is that we always think of people that we're bringing on in the long term, right? We view people not just as a function of completing something. That person can my head of sales even started off originally as in reception. She was answering phone calls and doing operations. And this was over 5 years ago. And she has time and time again proven herself. Shout out to Brittany on my team, who is now the head of sales at the company. And she is and if I had just thought of her and her original role in operations and everything, and I just was only trying to get through it, she would have never gotten the full potential and the opportunity, and also have given me worked with me so well all these years. So I think that there's a lot of real value, especially for small and medium-sized businesses that are growing. You need a team that supports you and grows with you. You don't want to just churn through a bunch of people. And that's what happens when it's negative, is you just churn.
How often do you actually communicate with your people?
Oh, I talk to my people. This is not a good, I don't know how good this is. I talk to them more than my best friends even, because
luckily one of them is your wife. So hopefully she's right up there. But but no, your teams, how often do you keep in communication with them?
I make myself available. I am always on Slack. My calendar is transparent. I let everyone see everything in my calendar, and they book times whenever they want. I'm just that type of person where I'd rather people not go in the wrong direction for so long.
Okay.
I'd rather them just ask. And so I'm talking to my team all the time, even during, this interview, there's Slack messages coming through, I'm sure. And and they'll look at my calendar and see I'm on this, and, they'll be able to figure it out. But I like to make myself available.
Fabulous. Okay. I hope you don't mind, Maurice. Feel free to go ahead and check those Slacks. I do need to step away just for a quick second.
Amazing.
I'm going to tell my team out there about a company I'm very proud to be a part of, Team Bonding. Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question. How can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? No matter where your company is located, Team Bonding offers powerful, engaging, custom team building events designed to get the best out of your team anywhere in the world. They've created a catalog of innovative events using the power of play as a learning tool and tapping into the correlation of work and play. So whether it's scavenger hunts to Jeopardy and so much more, the team bonding of activities, whether they're live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. So visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results. And we are back talking about internal communication with Maurice Harary. Maurice, how do you keep it fun with your people, even though they're so far distance?
I think keeping it fun is actually bringing it and understanding what your people need and want, not just what you want and what you need, right? And so in our world, in the bidding process, and RFPs, for people that don't know about RFPs in the bid lab, bids and RFPs traditionally, not working with the bid lab, is a very hard process. It's a very morale-sucking process. And especially RFP writers are often, run to the ground. I mean, I know this because I used to work at a huge tech company running RFPs, and my job was to get as many RFPs and bids out as with the same salary.
Just before I lose my team, an RFP is?
A request for proposal. Thank you. So a request for proposal, or an RFP, is a solicitation that a big business or government might issue in order to source new products and services. And so what we do is we help small businesses actually create beautiful proposals that make them stand out against larger companies that might have a huge team internally. Okay. So when we approached fun and positivity, and we were looking at it with our team, we said, what do you actually need? What is it, to not have you burn out? What are some of the points where you're feeling like, yes, and we offered vacation, right? We have paid time off and all that stuff. And of course it's important to do that baseline there. But then we went further. We created a 401k. We have a health insurance. We felt that the physical wellness of people was very important over time. And then we actually went a step further, and we realized that a lot of times we were doing things for people, and we would send them fun things, but they would end up giving it to their family members, or they'd be focusing on it with their friends or whatever, and they weren't really taking care of themselves. And so we created, which I think is very unique to our company, a credit that we give to all of our employees that compensates them for really once a month, that they can do whatever they want with it. That is all about wellness, and they could get a massage. They could go work out. They could do whatever they want with it. And it's about taking care of themselves and having fun. It's the most used benefit that we have here at the Bid Lab, because people just, and people bond about it. Then they talk about it. Oh, people will coordinate their massages, or they'll, even in a remote setting, they'll all take a class at the same time, just to have a fun, a fun thing to talk about, and that they all are doing at the same time. And even if it's remote, they're kind of coordinating it together.
Sounds great. But how do you take care of feedback, though, in those regards? I mean, is this an open forum for everybody, or is there a way for them to specifically talk to you one-on-one?
So I also do one-on-ones with my team. Okay. Not everyone on the team. I wish I could. But
sure. You are the CEO after all, not team therapist.
It's crazy, because my job is really to know what everyone at the company, what they feel and how they're feeling. I think that's what I need to do to be successful. And I wish I could meet with every single person every single week. But I do have weeklies with all the people that do report directly into me. And I encourage, and I think they, and I know that they do this, where they all also have their own one-on-ones with their respective team members. So that reported to them. And so I'm a huge believer on one-on-ones, and I schedule them for the person, not, hey, if you want to have a one-on-one, let me know. It's no, this is in the schedule every Tuesday at 2. And, if you're busy or you don't have anything really you want to talk about, you can cancel it on me. You can cancel it on me. I'm not going to be offended, but I want you to know that you always have an open time slot that is yours that you can talk to me about, whatever you want to talk about. And it's actually great because people really do talk, because it's every week, they'll come to me with things that I wouldn't have even thought to ask them about. But they talk about it with me because they feel comfortable. It's not maybe not on the first one-on-one, but maybe by the third or the fourth, and it starts to build that rapport.
Going back to communication just for a little bit, if you don't mind, how can you be sure that you're getting the most up-to-date, most useful, most effective technologies for communication?
Okay, that's a great question because we just had a huge transition here at the Bid Lab from our project management tool. We used to use a third-party tool, and we transitioned to Monday.com. And the reason why we knew, and we use Monday.com to communicate tasks, to communicate deliverables that we have for our clients. And it's central to what we do. I mean, really such a huge thing. And so making that transition was a very big deal for the Bid Lab. And the reason why we even realized it, because everyone tells you what you want to hear. Of course, I'm using it. Of course, yeah, they'll check off what they need to check off. But what we realized is that people were just checking off their communications or their tasks right before they were due, right? And they weren't matching up necessarily with, and we can see when people are doing their stuff, if they were emailing, and they weren't matching up. And instead of, coming down on my team and saying, hey, why aren't you using this tool we're paying for that we've implemented and we're doing all this work for? I said, hey, why aren't you using this tool that we are paying for and that we've spent so much time, implementing?
Right.
And, the people came back and they were working on the tool. They were working on the tool to report, but it wasn't serving them.
Okay.
And so what we did was we heard that feedback and it wasn't so explicit. They weren't telling us, hey, we need to replace this tool. Hey, we need to replace this tool.
Right.
We measured the usage and we really got to the crux. And because we're all positive and trust each other, it was able to have that communication where we're like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you using this thing? It's okay. You're doing your job, but like, what's going on? And then we realized like, hey, this is not working for our people. We got to look out for what's better. And so we did a ton of research. We actually do procurement for a living. So it was very straightforward for us to find, to compare the different tools out there. And then once we did, and we found one that matched with our specific needs and our scenarios, we went with it and we jumped right in. And our team is using it and loving it. And actually now the people that were not liking it are the people that love it the most because we listened to them and we didn't come down at them and we really served them a better tool that actually works for them.
So it's good to know that you can actually go in and check and see how often this is being used. Because my next question was going to be, speaking as the voice of, coming from the generation that never had things like this, how do you know it's working? Like what methodologies do you have in real time that can assure you your people are communicating, are working, and are getting the job done, even though you're so remote?
So, getting the job done, I did note that part of the question because you have, a person that you have to trust the person, and that trust has to be there in order, for anyone to be successful, whether they're in a remote setting or in an in-person setting. There's always ways you could circumvent, the working process. And I think seeing how they're, seeing their KPIs, seeing their results compared to others in the same role is also a very easy way to know like whether someone's actually doing their job or not. But going back into, the question about, verifying, the trust and verify component, I think is really important when you're, even if you can't audit in the back end or see usage and things like that. Right. The devil's in the detail. So ask a detailed question. Find the detail that they would only know if they did the tool, if they used the tool that you would. I do this all the time. And the people that know and do it, it's an easy question. But the people that don't. Okay. And so it's not meant to catch people. Right. But it is meant to catch people a little bit in the sense of you want to test it and make sure that you can trust what they're saying.
Okay. So you've been doing this for how long now?
We started the business in 2017.
Okay.
And so what is that now? 6, 7 years? We're in our 7th year of business and loving it. It's great.
Can you share for us any of the particular challenges you might have faced, perhaps, early on in the day, and then how it became a success story?
That's a good question. I think a very big challenge that we realized early on in the process was that my wife and I have very different communication skills. I mean, it was really the first time that we always communicated very well with each other. Obviously, we were married, but we didn't realize that our working communication was actually a little bit different. She came from the auto dealership world. It's very, very hierarchical. I came from a world where it was the tech world, very much like, just get the job done. Who cares? And so marrying the two communication styles was something early we had to figure out, right? And that's where the templates came in. That's where, and there's benefits to both, but there's also drawbacks to both kinds of communication styles, right? And so Jordan and I realized, we were like, and the reason why we realized this is because some of our early hires would tell us like, hey, I got a message from Jordan asking me to do this, and you're asking me to do this. I don't know which one I'm supposed to be doing right now. And you guys are both the boss, it's, and I feel bad for them, right? I'm like, shoot, we didn't, and Jordan and I didn't intentionally do it. We're both just focusing on our own, stuff that we need to be doing. And so what we realized is that we had to have a coherent leadership communication style that both of us could really adopt and be on the same page about, and respect one another to pull each other in to communications with people that report into both of us, so that we are both aware of when someone has something on their queue. And so I think for me in that instance, it was more of a reflection of my own leadership communication style, rather than trying to force everyone else into doing different, a different communication style. For me, it was about, hey, we need to be clear and we need to be coherent amongst each other to make sure that everyone else who's trying to do what they want to do, what they're trying to do, what they're getting paid to do the right way.
So did you and Jordan have to create a template for just the two of you before you can create the template for everybody else?
Well, we created the template. We have a bunch of templates here. And my team always laughs at me that I'm like, turn it into a template.
Nice.
And I always start the way that we do that is I always start the communication, right? I'll draft it. I'm the starter. Jordan's the finisher. So everyone knows at the company, it'll start with me and and it's not over until Jordan approves it, because, she knows exactly, she is just so attentive to the detail, and it is nice to have one voice for the company. And I'll tell you, her voice is better.
So besides that, though, the templates, let's say that somewhere out there in the ether of podcast world is a manager, somebody higher rank, somebody up in the C-suites who overhears this and is like, there could be interesting methods that he's talking about for me to use. Do you have any kind of, positive experiences or positive advice that you can give to that listener?
Yeah, I would say, I think you need to treat feedback and criticism as not this icky thing. I don't think that, it's like the same concept of talking about money. I think a lot of times people are uncomfortable about talking about money, and some people are uncomfortable about talking about feedback, right? They're nervous to give feedback. And the advice that I give to everyone about feedback is that the feedback don't just sandwich negative feedback with two positives. I've heard that one. And I think people have figured that one out, right? It's like they're so nice, then they say something mean. And then they do something nice. Okay, but they'll still remember the thing. Right. It's more about keeping it to the work and not on the personality, right? So if something is not meeting your expectations, explain to them what specifically in the document or something in the work that someone made. Explain to them exactly what you would have done differently. Don't just say, well, this is rushed. No, maybe even if it was rushed, there's probably a good reason why it was rushed, because they probably had a bunch of work that they had to do also. So, and that brings me to the second piece is give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Come to a place in a discussion where you're like, okay, But giving people the doubt is not just like, let's give them excuses in their head, but think about what their day could have looked like that brought them to failing that expectation, right? Do they look at their calendar? Do they have 1,000 meetings? Did they have a crazy due date right before that? Have you noticed like a change in their personality where maybe something on their personal lives could be impacting their work? Give people the benefit of the doubt when you're approaching them and working on that. But the best and most effective way you can instill feedback and open communication and positive communication is actually taking feedback yourself, right? I always, you asked me a few seconds ago, when did you guys start this company? Back in 2017.
Right.
I could be like, well, I've been here the longest, I know, and I'm great, right? But no, I actually, whenever someone new comes on, I always tell them, hey, you are a fresh pair of eyes, right? Like you are a fresh pair of eyes on our processes, our everything. So when you see something, you need to say something. And if you say something, sometimes I'll tell you, hey, we don't do it. We can't do that because X, Y, and Z. But other of the time, it's like, hey, we just seen this 1,000 times. So we didn't even pick up on that. That's a great point. Let's implement something like that and bring it to the work. Don't bring it to like, oh, I don't know why I had it set up like that. I'm so stupid. None of that. Take the feedback, take it to the work, and implement it. And when people see you taking feedback, then they will take feedback from you as well.
Right. You can point out problems without placing blame.
Yes, and be very specific about the problem and not the blame of who caused it.
Right. What specific means do you have for the employee to be able to do that for the managers? Is that part of that weekly meeting, or is there another methodology you use?
I love that you're thinking about it from the employee's perspective, because from the employee's perspective, it's really, really important to establish from the beginning that you are going to be open and that you're not, when you're going after, if there's something that you see that you want to improve, use the same advice. First of all, give your boss the benefit of the doubt. Bosses also have personal lives and have 1,000 other priorities that they're also focusing on. So make sure that you are also taking that into account when you're giving feedback, right? Don't just come to them and say, and be complaining. Come to them and say, I see that you're busy and that's just not been addressed. So I would suggest maybe doing something like this. So also come with a solution is a really nice, is always the best thing for an employee to do, or a possible solution. It doesn't mean that your solution will be implemented, but a possible solution to show that you're not just a complainer, but you're really trying to think through the problem and how to solve it. And your manager will love you.
But what methodologies do they have to do this? And how is it you can, from day one of hire, let them know that they have the freedom to do it?
I think the way that an employee could figure that out in the beginning is to really use the opportunity to identify how your manager likes to communicate.
Okay.
And what level of urgency they need to hear from you, right? So the first thing would be how they communicate. Is it phone? Is it Slack? Is it email? Change configure how you're communicating to how your manager best communicates if you're trying to effectively communicate with them. But the second thing is you have to understand, like, what level of attention does your manager really have on your role, right? Are they someone that, your role is really, really important to their success, so they need to know things right away? Or are they overseeing a bunch of different teams and different departments, and they're kind of hoping that you're going to be self-sufficient, right? If it's the first one, then you need to be problem solving with your manager as things are happening, be in the trenches with your manager. But if it's the opposite, you need to be prepared to come with real sets of solutions and options for your manager to choose from.
Okay. Maurice, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I hope you had a good time being here.
I did. This is fun. And, I have to say, it's such an important thing. Communication is central to success,
Absolutely.
Especially for a small growing business. So thank you so much for having me. I am always open to talking about this stuff. So if you ever want us again, we're here.
Please. Last thing, though, is there anything in the future that you would love to see done so that internal communication can become even easier?
I would say that, I would like for people to stop arguing over an instant messaging tool. I think that people are so used to texting and so used to all this stuff in their day-to-day life that they bring it into work. And I would love for some, face-to-face in a remote setting to come back and to be more prevalent. And we require everyone here to be on video every time they are talking to someone else on the team. So
I can't tell you how much I love hearing that, because anytime I do a virtual meeting facilitation for team building, and there are people who are trained, keep your video off, keep your mic muted unless it's your turn to say something. Nothing moves. I'm talking to me.
Yeah, I was like, I'm on video by the time you even jumped on.
Exactly.
I love video. I love seeing people's faces and their nonverbal reactions to things. It's huge.
Have you seen everybody's kids and pets? Do they all come on video with you?
By the way, they do. They see. We have a lot of parents. Shout out to Tim's cat Skittles, who always steps on his keyboard whenever we're talking. Only when we're talking, though. It's the funniest thing.
Very nice.
I really get to know all of them. Their kids, their pets, their backgrounds even. I see like, oh, you added a new picture to your background. And I love it. I love seeing it. It tells a lot about a person's personality.
All right. Lastly, my friend, is there any way that any of my team out there could find out more about you or about your company?
Yes, you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Maurice Harary. But if you want help with your bidding process or anything to sell to the government or a large enterprise, visit our website at www.thebidlab.com or check us out on social media. We're thebidlab.com.
Fantastic. Team, give it up for Maurice Harary.
Thank you.
And speaking of making the most out of a potentially tedious process, I hope you're ready, my friend, because in case you forgot, it's time for the speed round.
Second.
Yeah. Speed round. All right. Briefly to recap from what I was explaining to you at the beginning of the show, I'm going to play some music that will play for 60 seconds. Then during that time, I'm going to ask you a series of completely innocuous questions. This is just our way of getting to know you a little bit better. You answer as many as you can, as fast as you can, but if you are feeling competitive at all, we're looking to beat 14.
14. I am very competitive. So.
All right, let's see if we can do it. As soon as you hear the music, I'm going to start asking questions, and away we go. What's your name?
Maurice.
How many kids do you have?
2.
Which one's your favorite?
Neither.
Do you have any pets?
Yes.
If you could hear your pet speak, what would you like it to say?
How much she loves me.
Do you consider yourself a leader or a follower?
A leader.
What's your favorite book?
New York, the novel.
What's one choice in life you regret?
Not marrying my wife earlier.
If you could be any cartoon character for a day, who would you like to be?
Mojo Jojo.
If you could... what's the most courageous thing you've ever done?
Started this company.
If you could star in any sport, what sport would you like to be in?
Tennis.
But what's your favorite holiday?
Thanksgiving.
If you could time travel, where would you go?
To the 1700s.
15! You did it, buddy! We beat it!
I'm very competitive. This is what I do for a living, so I gotta win.
Fantastic! Oh my goodness! Oh, now this is a show for the ages. Thank you. Not that it wasn't great already. Maurice, thanks again. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you again in the future. Good luck to you, your wife, all your team. And thank
you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, pal. And thank you, my team out there. That's it. We are wrapping up yet another episode of Team Building Saves the World. If you've enjoyed this episode, whether you're new to the podcast or an old fan of the show, please be sure to share it with everyone you know. Whether they're your coworker, friend, family member, doesn't matter. It just helps us to share all this vital information. You can find out all about us, including all past episodes, at teambonding.com/podcast. You can also find us wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Wherever you go, that's where I'll be. And don't forget to look for all of us on the social medias at Team Bond Podcast. And leave us a message telling whether you like the show or what you didn't like about the show, or if you have an idea for a future topic. I want to hear from you. So, my friends, before we say farewell for this episode of Team Building Saves the World, please never ever forget, If you're within the sound of my voice, you're on my team now, and I am forever going to be on yours. So long, team. I'll see you next time.
It's been said that you learn more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. So why not put your coworkers to play with the help of the team at Team Bonding? Team Bonding was founded over 20 years ago with one simple question. How can employees have a great time while fostering strong, authentic bonds between people who work together? Their catalog of innovative events includes scavenger hunts, Jeopardy, and much more. Each activity, whether live, virtual, or hybrid, maximizes the impact of team building with an accent on fun. Visit teambonding.com to schedule your event now. Team Bonding, when you want seriously fun results.